Hi, I'm Gillian Ferguson. I'm a social worker and I work in the field with older people or elders, and we're just here today with Gerry Skelton to talk about the theme of spirituality and social work. For the purposes of the tape, can you introduce yourself?
I could. My apologies, I'm slightly full of a cold here, so that doesn't distract. Gerry Skelton, lecturer at Belfast Met for about 20 plus years now, getting old. Lecture in social work, social care, counselling and related subjects.
The theme we are broadly chatting about today is spirituality. If possible, can you define or describe that for me?
An easy question. Yeah, I'll have a go. Spirituality for me, I like to break it down a wee bit. My catch-all phrase for this is about inspiration and perspiration. That's what spirituality involves. If we think about the word spirit for me, I don't speak Latin nor do I write it, but I understand it comes from a Latin word spiritus, which is about spirit and breath. And when I think about spirituality, it's about breathing in and breathing out. So in terms of your topic for your workshop, it's about spirituality and aging. And the two most important breaths for me and for every human being is our first breath and our last breath. So to be inspired, which is what spirituality is about for me, is about our first breath, is about taking breath, and of course the last breath is to expire. So everything in between then is the journey. So spirituality is about that. It's about an animating, in my view, an animating force, an energy that galvanizes us to positivity, to do better, to think better, to feel better. It can be a moment, it can be a culmination of moments. It can be found in anything. For some people that's God, for other people that's nature, for others it's a combination. So it's a fantastic word, it's a fantastic experience, and it's one that's often, it's just not talked enough about. And Gillian, I'm really delighted that you're taking this opportunity to bring that to your workshop. Well done.
In terms of social work, can you talk to me about how it is addressed in social work or not?
I'm on record about saying this, so I suppose I just must be true to who I am in relation to this. Let the spirit out. It's a taboo subject in social work. It's not often mentioned. I'm grateful to your own recording that it was me had mentioned that to you in class. I think the only lecturer I've ever heard mention that. It's largely avoided, except interestingly in my view for children, elders, or people who have a disability. So in those fields it's there, it's in the medical profession, but again in those three categories. For the rest of the population it isn't. I challenge everybody to think of a good counselling textbook, a good social work textbook, and to see what chapter you can find on spirituality. There are very, very, very few. Now that's improving in more recent years, and by that I'm talking about the last 3-4 years. There's very little research done in Northern Ireland on spirituality per se. And in any social work curriculum and counselling curriculum, it's not an explicit theme. So that tells me something about the taboo, about how it's avoided. And in conversations, as you can remember, even when I mentioned it, there's almost a hushed silence. And people have been frightened of proselytizing, thinking spirituality means religion. It can, thinking it means it's anti-religious. It ain't. And there's a whole range of spiritualities. And I think, and my challenge to your audience is, to think about, well, what does spirituality mean for you? Where do you hear about it? When was that ever raised with you? And I know you'll come back to that one of the questions. So yeah, taboo, and I think what we're trying to do today, and another things that I've done, is break this taboo to get to the other side of it, because this needs to be a very accessible, and it is, theme, and it needs to be a helpful conversation.
In practical terms, how can we address spirituality in our practice?
How do we bring it into social work practice? A number of things to say, and I know we're caught for time, we have to make this concise, which, you know, I'd love to talk for days on this now. But if allow me to be the lecturer first, we traditionally now use what we call a biopsychosocial model, which will be familiar to the work that you're doing in terms of that. And I was talking to a psychiatrist just in this last year, and I said I was challenged by that model, and he said I'm going to have to get into the 21st century, and I said no, my challenge is it's a bit outdated. I want to talk about the biopsychosocialspiritual model, and that was almost the end of the conversation. We're trying to follow that up, but slowly. We need to create permission for people to know that this is a legitimate theme for them to be discussing. So I take a couple of steps back. It should be on a social work curriculum. It should be in social work training. It should be then a social work practice. So at every carer service user sitting on this seat talking to a lovely social worker like yourself knows instinctively that there is permission to raise this as a topic. So we need to create that permission. We need to have people equipped then to deal with it. So how can I raise it as a topic when I haven't been educated or trained on it? We also need to do our own work. I mean, the danger of proselytizing things like that is well researched, well stated, etc. It's all out there, we're aware of it. We live in Northern Ireland with the spectre of sectarianism, so we all get that. We know that's a danger. Part of the rest of it is, you can't mention the word spirituality, Gillian, without it tapping into our own spirituality. So professionals are very good at avoiding, very good at making the other do the work. So that's something real. And somebody coming in to ask for help and that sort of thing may want to say to the worker, well, what do you understand by spirituality? So I can imagine why most workers don't want to go down that line. In addition, then we need to look at what resources are out there. There's been some writers out there like Sheila Furness, Philip Gillian, Bernard Moss, that have written some stuff about social work, the role of religion, faith, spirituality, those sort of, depending on what people like. There's something I know you were looking at and you might want to share with your group about Sheila and Philip's model for looking at spirituality and resources that might be helpful in sharing that. But bottom line is, we need to come with a holistic view of the service user or carer. What is it they need? How are we assessing this? Spirituality should be an important part of any assessment, any intervention, any meaningful conversation, and we need to be available to that. And then we need to be able to say to people, and in terms of resources, this is what we're able to offer. So there's a whole lot of ways that we still need to work this out. Being a taboo subject, there's not a lot of resources there. I've created some, those people have mentioned as well in relation to that. But bottom line, let's say to people, this is a legitimate topic. It's a legitimate part of the assessment, the intervention, the outcome. We need to be training people then to say this is okay, training them, educating them, etc., etc. And then opening us up in professional discussions with colleagues. My challenge for you is to open up with your colleagues. Start talking about the role of spirituality. Start talking about them, what's their own spiritual appetite, how do they feed themselves spiritually. I draw an analogy between physical fitness. If I wanted to be physically fit, I presume you'd say to me, well, go to the gym, eat better, those sorts of things. If I said, what about my emotional fitness? Most workers are a bit stymied, but they don't quite know what to say. Now, if I say, what about my spiritual fitness? Well, they leave the room then. We're not very well versed in these sorts of things. So we avoided. Einstein talked about having a holy curiosity. We need to be reaching and thinking. Rogers famously talked about, in terms of his core conditions, the 6 core conditions, he famously added another one to that, about 1980 from memory, the role of spirituality, which he had underestimated, the role of presence. And everybody in front of us needs a few things. They need to know life is meaningful. They need to know we're hopeful people. So we're at least at a minimum, in terms of good social work values, principles and ethics, at a minimum, people need to know we're not going to do them any harm and we can do them a wee bit of good. And for the vast majority of people, they're looking to you for help. And the way that we see that is usually they come in with a lowered spirit. You can tell instinctively, you know what that means. Everybody listening to us knows what that means. And if they feel going out a wee bit better for having met you or whoever, their spirit is lifted.
Just in conclusion, have you anything to add, Gerry?
I just want to pay credit to you for championing this cause. I mean, I've been doing this, it's been quite a lonely place really, and a lonely furrow for a number of years talking about this. I was delighted to be invited by the University of Ulster to address this in their counselling programme. Delighted to be invited by Queen's University to address it in their social work programme. I was so impressed that you came back to me a couple of weeks ago and said, hey big fella, I want to chat to you about this again. Spirituality, I didn't forget, and I didn't forget the challenge. And that you're taking it on because you've been, and I hope, become someone who not only challenges people around this, but becomes a champion for this. I am passionate about this, I'm enthusiastic about this. And the definition, the root word of enthusiasm is spirit. Thank you, Gillian.
In conclusion, I just want to express my gratitude to yourself, Gerry, and also to the crew here for helping me. Thank you, Paula. It's an absolute pleasure to hear somebody else's views on this and their inspiration and their desire to further this topic. Thank you very much.